It's story time. Welcome to Story Time. I'm Kimberlyn with Life's Work Yoga, and welcome back. We just took a month off, so welcome back. First and foremost, thank you for being here, and welcome to September. Now, I don't know where you're at and what this season shift is like for you, but as someone who works in this education, in this academic kind of field. In fact, my first career post-college and graduate school was working in higher education. And so every fall, I have this renewed sense of purpose and order and structure, probably from working 10 plus years in higher education. I loved the summer as a time for reset and for fall as a time to begin again. So this September, not only are we beginning again in terms of school resuming, and for my family that means my kids are resuming their in-school instruction. Now today, they actually have the day off, yesterday for Labor Day, and today for Rosh Hashanah. So for our Jewish friends, peace to you. Whenever you have found this video, welcome. Welcome to Story Time. Storytime is a weekly free service, free broadcast that really is committed to creating sacred space for sharing our stories. Because stories are how we make authentic connection, by telling ourselves and sharing with each other the stories that have formed and influenced and put structure to our lives. It's not so much that stories serve as the escape from our life. In fact, that would be a detriment. We want to use our stories as ways in which to, yes, dive deep to reflect and enjoy some introspection. But when we come to that place of learning, when we come to a grounding, a calm, abiding place where we can peel back the layers for clearer seeing, that clearer seeing is the doorway, is the invitation for the transformation and the learning that could come as a result of those stories. Those, to me, are the best stories, those that facilitate our growth and our learning and our transformation. Those are the stories that I like to highlight here in Story Time. Now, we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary of Story Time, and it's almost difficult for me to wrap my head around that. But that's also because much of this time of doing story time, I had to wing it in terms of shifting to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, in light of all of that we've endured, there are some good things that have come out of this deeper work of paying attention and having to do things differently. Sure, I'm exhausted. That's why I took some time off in August, in order to recalibrate and reset. So today's story is actually going to take you through a bit of a history lesson in terms of where begin again maybe began. In other words, this didn't just happen for me to create this hashtag and this practice of beginning again that is so paramount to Life's Work Yoga and my practice of living yoga. In some ways, beginning again, or this mantra of begin again, was taught to me from a very early age. See, as one of 7 children, my family relied on each other quite heavily because my dad's job moved us around the nation quite frequently. All said, I think that there are 5 elementary schools that I attended between kindergarten and 5th grade. I moved into a middle school at that point. Now, what I want to, emphasize here is that there are both lessons to be learned from our experience, but also there's consequences or price that we would pay in terms of what are the setbacks, the downfalls, the hurdles we have to overcome. And I want to address a few of those, but first let me tell you the story. So it starts in Pierce, South Dakota, and I was preparing for school. Now I have an October birthday, so I was technically 4 years old when I started my first year of kindergarten. Hang on, that's part of the story. So I started in kindergarten living in Pierce, South Dakota, but we were only a few weeks away from our next big move to Round Rock, Texas, which at that time was a little tiny little suburb of Austin, but has since grown to really be merged in the city proper almost of Austin. But I really wanted to go to the local school that my brothers had been going to for a number of years, and that was St. Joseph's Catholic School, the school that was affiliated with our parish. So my parents agreed that I could start for a single week at St. Joseph's School. Well, that delighted me because I had been wanting to go to school probably my whole life. I have always been drawn to learning. Now, because my academic records then came from this private school, when we arrived in Texas and my parents enrolled me, they wouldn't let me go into kindergarten. They wouldn't let me go into first grade. They made me take kindergarten again. And I can remember sitting outside the principal's office in this, what seemed at the time like a very big chair, like my feet didn't reach the floor and I was kind of just swinging my legs, but my parents were in the principal's office discussing my case about whether or not I got to go to first grade. Now, I was academically on par, ready for whatever first grade had to offer. But because of my birthday and because my academic records were transferred from a private institution, they would not agree that I would be moved into first grade. Hence, my second year in kindergarten. Now, I was pretty defeated. I was ready to move on to real school, or so I thought. And I was fortunate because my kindergarten teacher met me in that space and developed an entirely complementary curriculum, particularly with English and reading and with mathematics. That she got me separate material so that I could continue to progress from where I arrived at my school, as opposed to kind of just being in it with the other kindergartners. Now, we were only in Texas for a couple of years, and I moved again this time to a little town, Manchester, Maine. So from the south up to the northeast. Now, again, I had to begin again. This time I was starting second grade. Now, starting second grade was a whole new opportunity because they actually put me into a class that was blended second graders and third graders. So after having that second year of kindergarten and first grade in Texas, I got the opportunity to be blended into a mixed grade class, which gave me the opportunity to learn much of the content that the third graders were enjoying as a second grader. Now, again, this lasted for about 4 years, and I had a really dynamic experience. In fact, when we moved to Maine, one of the things that I remember most about that move was that my parents dropped us off that morning from our temporary living in a campground because we didn't have occupancy yet of our new home. We actually beat the movers with our vehicle driving there, and our stuff was still coming in the moving van. So we came from the campground where we were staying, we were living in that first week of school, and we had our art supplies from our cross-country move trip. But literally we were down to just a few pencils. So my mom was breaking pencils in half and sharpening these little nubs so that we could each go to school with at least a few pieces of paper and a half a pencil. And I think that was probably one of my first kind of social awarenesses, in the sense that I felt very poor. I felt very uncomfortable with, even though it was a temporary circumstance, it felt like a lack, like we were missing out. Now, everything went fine. We got into school. We were actually partnered up, at least my teacher partnered me up with Sarah Warren was her name, and she was meant to be my guide. She was introduced to me as my new friend. She did become a friend, and we were friends for the entirety of my time living in Maine. We played on softball together, we were in school together, we had classes together, we even had play dates and all that kind of stuff. As a result of that first meeting, by way of my teacher, her name was Miss Pratt, later became Mrs. McKenney, but at that point, Maggie Pratt was my lifeline. She helped me integrate into the local community. Now, Maine is not particularly welcoming to outsiders. You have to be like at least 3 or 4 generations within Maine in order to be considered a native or a local, right? Now, needless to say, my family became a strong support network, meaning my main playmates were my siblings. We did everything together, the 7 of us kids. Now, truth is, there was just 6 of us at this point. The 7th one came later. But as my brother started to enter into high school, my dad made us a commitment. He made us a promise. And that resulted in our move back to the Midwest, back to Minnesota, because that would allow my dad to be more at home. He still was traveling for his work, but Maine is pretty remote, in which case it would take him 2 days to get back and forth between his contract, his client site, and where we lived. So by moving to Maine, we became more centralized. And that benefited me because I got to go through junior high, middle school, and high school all at the same place. It wasn't until I moved to college that I really noticed the benefits and the costs of my experience of having moved for so many years. Because one of the things that was key to me in choosing my undergraduate education was I wanted to go to a Catholic institution. All the way back from my kindergarten year, I got a week of it, went through my entire upbringing participating in my family's faith of the Catholic Church. So by going to a Jesuit institution for my undergrad, I felt like I finally got to fulfill that lifelong ambition. Furthermore, I wanted to go someplace that was a little bit different than kind of the suburban living that my family had always enjoyed, although I appreciated and benefited from that. I wanted to have a fresh start. And that's probably the second concept here that I learned. The first is that even though I'm not particularly close to my family, I know that I can count on my family. And I believe that that is directly related to how dependent we were on each other every time we moved to begin again. To see each other at school was a way in which we could remember that this too was a safe place, even though it was unfamiliar and new. So the second thing that I learned as a result is that having a fresh start can be something that's really beneficial, in the sense that we kind of take some time to shift perhaps what others expected or experienced from us and begin again in how we present ourselves. And I can remember that specifically when we moved to Maine, and then again when I moved to Minnesota, but especially when I moved into college. That is when I fully embraced introducing myself by my full given name, Kimberlyn. Prior to that, I was always Kim, and it never really resonated. When I started to publish my writings back in high school, that was when I started using my full name. But I didn't start introducing myself by my full name until I stepped into those independent and autonomous decisions when I left my family and moved to college. Now, the third thing that I learned as a result of these multiple moves, and it's something that we learn as children no matter where it is, whether it's from different moves across country or just being to people's homes or different environments, is that I learned that different places have different rules. I learned that different regions of the nation have different cultures and subcultures. And as someone with fair skin and freckles, I didn't fit in so well in Minnesota. There was a lot of Norwegian influence there. But I didn't even realize it in Maine, which is a very strong Catholic and Irish community. Now, even though I didn't fit in because I wasn't born there, I fit in the sense that people didn't know that until they talked to me. So finding ways to fit in and belong has been a huge part of my entire story. It's no wonder that I wanted to cultivate space for authentic connection, because the consequence of all of these moves, and probably also just my personality being one of 7 children and all of the other things that go along with that, is that I was not particularly good at cultivating long-term relationships. In fact, to this day, I have very little contact with people who I've lived with, shared stories with, shared adventures with, other than those that I've met here in my current home in Maryland, which after marrying and starting our family, we've lived here now for 20 years. What a different experience for my children than my own upbringing. So, do they have some of the benefits of moving a lot? No, but they do have some benefit of having a diverse parent couple. My husband, he is Japanese by birth, or he's American. He's half Irish, half Japanese. So they get that cultural experience. But the point of this story is that whatever our experiences are, we can cultivate them to find the lessons that have helped us to grow and to learn. And to also identify those things that perhaps were hurdles and obstacles, and then practice learning to overcome them. As a result, I do most of my work intimate settings, one-on-one, small groups. Why? Because it's what matters to me. It's because it's what was missing, I believe now, as an adult looking back, on what I missed out on most as a young person coming of age in this world, so that it took me literally a decade after my independence from my family to realize what I was really looking for was a sense of connection and community. And I found that eventually, after a couple of other experiments and places to employ and to be at work, I found that in the yoga community. And eventually integrated all that I've been studying and learning through my entire life into the programs that I offer here at Life's Work Yoga. Not just story time, but on Mondays I lead a meditation program here at 12:15. On Tuesdays is story time. On Wednesday we do a 30-minute complete practice of breathing, moving, and resting. Thursday I offer Coach's Chat, which is really a diving deeper into the yoga philosophy through storytelling, yes, but also reflection and introspection. And then we wrap up the week on Friday with yet another offering at 12:15, and that offering is Just Breathe. A few minutes of connecting here in this space of virtual connection. Now, the beauty of much of this content is that it is then shared for free access on the Life's Work Yoga YouTube channel. So whether it's you are here in live, present energy and time and space, or whether you connect with me later, know that authentic connection is what helps us facilitate the true growth of becoming our best true self. And for me, those practices of becoming are rooted in the yoga tradition. Hence, my program that I call Yoga Living is meant to teach you not only how to integrate yoga into your daily living, but to have inspiration accessible so that you can stay engaged and inspired and connected with your community. So, I hope that you have benefited from this story with story time today and the invitation to consider, are you ready? Are you willing to begin again? And perhaps that means there's something that is waiting for you to show up. Or maybe you need to do some reflection to figure out what advantages you've had from your experience, what obstacles might need to be overcome, so that you can move into what's next with grace and with confidence and compassion. That's, to me, the practice of yoga off of the mat and beyond. Thanks for being here, and thanks for letting me share my story. May you be well. May you breathe deeply and move freely. May you labor lovingly and live vibrantly. Namaste.